Good evening, Rowan. It's the 20th of November 2015 and it's about 11:30 and I'm making you a short little video this evening before I start raping and pillaging over the weekend. So, I was going to talk more about the video you made yesterday where you were talking about Jacob and Esau, and you were also speaking about Joseph in the book of Genesis, but unfortunately the battery went flat on my camera, so I only got the chance to talk about Jacob. So I just want to briefly mention what you said about Joseph. The relevant story about Joseph, the stories about him, can be found in the book of Genesis between chapters 37 and 45, and many people will be familiar with this story, some aspects of it at least, from the musical Joseph and the Amazing Technicolour Dreamer. But anyway, Joseph is one of the 12 sons of Jacob. He's his father's favourite son because he's the son of his favourite wife Rachel, and also a child of his old age. So he gets quite overindulged, and he has some dreams where he sees sheaves of corn bowing down before him, and the sun and moon and stars bowing down before him. And his brothers get a bit fed up with him, really, because they're doing all the work, and he's got his long-sleeved coat, which isn't a multicoloured coat, but is a coat with sleeves, which means he can't do any of the work with them, otherwise he'll get his coat with sleeves dirty. So this is the significance of his coat, really. So they get so fed up with him, they decide that they're going to kill him because they've had enough. But one of the brothers persuades them not to kill him, and instead they sell him into slavery to a bunch of wandering Ishmaelites. And the Ishmaelites take him to Egypt, where he's sold as a slave there, and he ends up in the household of Potiphar. And he does very well there because he's an intelligent young man and very capable, and he ends up as head of the household. So things are going as well as they can when you've been sold into slavery, and he's going on there. But unfortunately Potiphar's wife takes a fancy to him and tries to seduce him, and he refuses her, and she then accuses him of trying to seduce her, and he ends up being thrown in jail. So things have got pretty miserable for him, and he gets to be well regarded in the prison and gets a reputation as an interpreter of dreams. So later on, when Pharaoh was having some troubling dreams about 7 thin cows and 7 fat cows and things to that effect, one of Pharaoh's servants who'd been in prison with Joseph, the chief cupbearer, remembers that Joseph could interpret dreams, so he's brought out of prison and he interprets Pharaoh's dreams. There's going to be 7 years of abundance and then 7 years of famine. So Pharaoh's so pleased that Joseph has interpreted these dreams that he gives him a high office in his kingdom to manage the affairs of Egypt, so that the nation doesn't suffer because of these 7 years of famine which Joseph has predicted are coming. So he's managing the supplies of food. And while he's doing that, in the years of famine, his brothers and the rest of his family are starving back in the land of Canaan because they didn't know about the famine. So they hear that there's food available in Egypt because it's been stored during the abundant years, and they go down to Egypt to buy food, and they end up buying food from Joseph. Now, to cut a long story short, he puts them to the test and decides that they've put away their murderous ways and they've changed, because they try and protect their younger brother, Benjamin, when Joseph behaves in a threatening way. And then he reveals himself to them. And then they go and bring their father and all their family, and they all go to live in Egypt to be with Joseph. And they live happily there for some generations. So that's the story of Joseph in a nutshell. And this is what you say about it. In Genesis, you have the story of Joseph, who begins as a really, really objectionable character. He's a thoroughly objectionable young man. He's sneery and superior and ambitious. Can't think of anyone else like that, can you? And eventually, all his dreams come true, and he's become Grand Vizier of this Arabian Nights kingdom, and there are his brothers who hated him, grovelling on the floor before him, and you think, yeah, that's what it's all about. So is that what you dream of then, Rowan? All your dreams come true when people are grovelling on the floor before you, including your own brothers if you had any, and you think, yeah, that's what it's all about. That's a bit odd, a bit of an odd thing to say. You do give a lot away about yourself inadvertently, you know. Then you say, but he breaks out in tears when he sees this. He suddenly realises that he's got there, and what's got him there is a whole lot of things which have separated him from others, which have given him power that he's been using very harshly, and he can't keep it up. And Joseph says to his brothers, you thought that you were doing something terrible to me, but it was also I could do something good for you. Well, Joseph actually says to his brothers that they thought they'd sent him to Egypt, but it was actually God who'd sent him ahead of them to Egypt to preserve their lives. And then you say, and you see this man who's been through this strange fairy tale existence suddenly saying, you know what this is all about, it's so that I can serve you. Well, I don't know how you would describe being sold into slavery and unjustly thrown in jail and suffering through all of that, a fairy tale existence. You really do live in La La Land. It's quite bizarre. Anyway, that's when you go on to start talking about Jacob and Esau, which I spoke about in the video yesterday. So I'll leave it there for now, but there's plenty more of your bizarre outpourings to comment on at a future date. So do have a nice weekend, won't you? And try not to worry too much about my virtue. I know you've been very preoccupied about it all these years, and it's really unnecessary. So there you are then. Hasta luego.